community organisations are doing some of the hardest and most important work there is, supporting people, building connection, holding communities together. But the reality for community employers has never been more complex. This podcast exists to support community employers through practical insights, honest conversations, and resources that you can actually use. If you employ people in the community sector, this podcast is for you. This podcast is for community employers across Western Australia, supporting the people who support our communities. Good morning and welcome. My name is Annette Watkins and I'm the Executive Director of Community Employers WA. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're recording and listening today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. We recognise the ongoing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to land, culture and community, and acknowledge the vital role Aboriginal community-controlled organisations play across Western Australia. This is the first episode in a podcast series created specifically for community employers across Western Australia. Across the state, community organisations are doing some of the hardest and most important work there is, supporting people, building connection, holding communities together. But the reality for community employers has never been more complex. From workforce shortages, to burnout, to compliance pressure, funding uncertainty, to governance risk, expectations keep growing, but resources don't. This podcast is about meeting that reality head on. Each episode will focus on practical issues, shared experience, and real conversations about what's happening in the sector. So whether you're a CEO, a manager, a financial controller, a board member, a HR lead, this series is here to support you with insights you can actually use. To kick off the series, we want to start with something very practical and topical, the issue of which award applies to your organisation. Joining me today is Simon Bibby, Industrial Lead of CEWA's Getting It Right project. He's going to speak to us about understanding the awards. Simon, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Annette. It's great to be here.
Simon, to get started, can you give us a bit more information about Getting It Right? What's it about and what does it aim to achieve?
The Getting It Right project is sponsored by Lottery West and delivered by CEWA on behalf both of its members and also the broader social and community services sector in WA. What the project focuses on is helping employers to understand their industrial relations obligations, particularly which industrial award applies to their organisation and employees.
I see. So it's great that it's not just for members, but it's for the entire community services sector. But why is this such an important issue for community employers?
Yes, it's very important. If an employer is paying staff under the wrong award, it's likely those employees are being underpaid. And when that happens, that will then trigger obligations to notify the Fair Work Ombudsman, which is the government body set up to ensure employees observe their obligations and pay their employees correctly. If an organisation is found to be underpaying employees, it has an obligation both to do, firstly, an audit to work out exactly what the underpayment is, and then it will need to take steps to back pay both current and also former employees for the underpayment. That back payment could even go back 6 years. So you can see that if you're caught in that situation, it's going to be a process that will be complex, time-consuming, and in some cases could be financially devastating for an organisation.
Absolutely, Simon, particularly if you're having to go back 6 years in your records. Can you talk a little bit more about the particular challenge for the social and community services sector?
Yes, there is a significant challenge because our sector could potentially be covered by one of the two industrial relations systems that operate in Australia. So the first step any SACS employer has to work through is to determine which of those systems apply. It could be the federal system, which is covered by the Fair Work Act, or alternatively, it could be the WA system, which is covered by the WA Industrial Relations Act. Now, this is where it becomes complicated. And which award, that is, which industrial award applies to you, will depend which industrial commission covers your services. It could be that you're covered by the federal system, but if that's the case, you will need to be termed a constitutional or trading corporation.
This idea of being a constitutional or a trading corporation is probably something that community organisations wouldn't think of themselves as doing. So, how does that work in practice, Simon?
No, that's a very good question. And yes, it can be very confusing. Courts have tended to interpret the term trading very broadly, so it includes things like charging fees, selling services at a specific cost, or even hiring out facilities. So you can see that for a SACS organisation, they could actually be involved in those sorts of activities. And the question is, are they then a trading and constitutional corporation? And that will be determined by the amount of revenue that will come from one of those sources. Now, what we're saying is that if about 30% of their revenue is coming from a trading source as defined, it would be reasonable to conclude that they're a constitutional corporation. And so, what that means is, if that's the case, the Social Community Home Care and Disability Services Award would apply. And on that basis, that's the award they would have to be paying their employees under.
I see. Thank you. I hear that you refer to 30% of the revenue comes from trading sources. Is that 30% threshold exact?
Unfortunately, it isn't. And so it does vary. And so courts have looked at different organisations and come to different conclusions. And so some organisations can be trading at a much lower level. Now, what we've done to try and make this as easy and accessible for employers in our industry is to suggest that 30% is a conservative benchmark, which, if you meet, would, in our view, be an indication you are a trading corporation.
I see. It does sound challenging, as you said, particularly for small organisations. Can you talk a little bit more about the supports that are available and, importantly, who in the organisation should be looking at this issue?
Yes, it is a challenge, and hence we have developed resources for people to access on our website. We suggest that in regard to this initial assessment, it would be important for someone who has a good understanding of your revenue base, either your accountant or financial controller, or indeed a CEO. And what we're suggesting is you visit our website. There is a short quiz you can undertake, and if necessary, you can go further by watching one of the webinars that we have recorded, and that will enable you to work through a process and come to a better understanding of the amount of trading income you're currently receiving. If it is the case that after you've gone through that process and you're still a little concerned, we've made arrangements with a law firm, Mills Oakley, to undertake a process where what would happen is you would come to me, I'll have an initial consult with you, we'll make some assessment as to whether you need to take the next step. And if you do, then I'd be guiding you as to what documents you'll have to get in place for the lawyers to look at. And then once that's in place, I would send you off to Mills Oakley. They've been very generous and indicated that first consultation will be for free. And only then, if they need to go further and do further work for you, they would then charge you. But that's the resource we've put in place for people, and we believe that that will help them on the journey of getting this matter absolutely right.
Thanks, Simon. That's very helpful. What about the organisations, though, that happen to not be constitutional corporations or trading corporations? What happens to them?
Yeah, once again, very good question. What will happen is that it will be likely that they're going to be covered by one of the WA awards. So they're not covered by the Social Community Home Care and Disability Services Award. They would be covered by either the Social Community Services Interim Award or the Crisis Assistance and Supported Housing Interim Award. They're awards of the WA Industrial Relations Commission, and they do differ significantly from the federal award, what we call the Social Community Home Care and Disability Services Award. And so that's why it's so important that people get it right and make sure they're paying under the correct award.
Absolutely, Simon. Getting it right is the name of it, isn't it? Any final issues employers should be aware of?
Yes, what we've heard so far as we've been running this project is that some organisations have said to us, well, we were successful in our tender, we did get a program, and then we were told that we must pay under the federal award, the SCHAD, or the Social Community Home Care and Disability Services Award. And at that point, they actually haven't, that is, the federal body, the funding body, hasn't done an assessment of the revenue. So hence, in that situation, it's the organisation's responsibility to actually still take the steps to go through the processes that we've set up to make sure that they are properly covered by that award or not.
Well, thank you, Simon. You've covered a lot of ground today. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Annette. It's a pleasure.
The issues we've discussed today aren't abstract, they're practical, real, and already affecting community employers across WA. If today's conversation raised any concerns or issues, you're probably not alone. These pressures are widely shared even when they're carried quietly. This podcast exists to support community employers through practical insights, honest conversations, and resources that you can actually use. If this work matters to you, make sure you follow the podcast so you don't miss what's coming next. Thank you for your work that you do, and thanks for listening.